when you look at Moses' life and what he did, and Moses was the only one that was able to complete the tikkun of every level of the soul. And so there is a.
Now, when you say every level, are you talking about the Yehida and the Yahaya as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Keter of the Yehida, which he's the only one that's able to do it. That's the level his soul was. That's why he merited to marry the Shekhinah. That was the whole thing about the tent of meeting. He was in union with the Shekhinah. He was that pure. He is her husband. He is Zah. Moses is more than quote unquote man. Because he elevated his soul to a point of absolute perfection. That's why he was able to fight the Satan over his death. Moses only died because God finally said, "You have to do this. I need you," type of deal, right? Because Moses fought him. Moses fought the Satan, the angel of death, and said he used the Havayah and kept him away. And every time he tried to do something, Moses knew so much he was able to out chess move the entire thing. It was only when God had to intervene to make it happen. That's why no man knows where Moses is buried, because he's interdimensionally buried. There's a story that when the Romans
go ahead.
There's a story.
Interdimensionally what?
Burial.
It's interdimensionally what? Buried.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a story that when the Romans conquered Israel, they wanted to know where Moses was buried. Mount Nebo, whatever. So they made the sages, the rabbis, take him over there, and they said he's buried on that hill right over there. You could see the, let's call it the headstone. So they go down the valley, they go down the mountain, they go up to the other side of the hill, and they look over, and where they just come from, they said, "Oh, well, he's buried right over there." So they had to go back on the other side. So they would go down the mountain and go to the other mountain, and it would appear on the other side because it's interdimensional. And they were never able to find, quote unquote, the burial place of Moses. And God doesn't want anybody to find the burial place of Moses, because just think of the paganism that would be the religion that would be started at that spot. I mean, look what they've done. Look what they've done to the burial place of Jethro. It's the most beautiful place in Israel you ever saw. There's no shrine or monument or temple in all of Israel that is more beautiful than what the Druze have done for Jethro, the descendants of Jethro. It is phenomenal. Just think what they'd have done if it was Moses. And so, but when the Gilgal is finished, go ahead.
Well, let me ask you this before you go any further in it. I know this kind of ties into what you're talking about, and I was wondering, when you said that, so when a soul Gilgals, when a soul rectifies and makes tikkun, so that piece that's rectified, it stays rectified. So the Gilgal part of the soul that comes back is a lesser part of that soul.
It is an unrectified piece. Yes, it's an unrectified piece. Right? Usually when that piece of that soul is rectified, the totality of that soul, when it's rectified, that person dies. That's the secret of death. That's the secret of death. When that person's soul is rectified as much as it's going to be, then that person dies. And so, Pete, you may ask, what happens to the people? Let's say they got cancer. Okay, let's say they got bad cancer, and they've never been. Well, let's say they were a tzaddik or not a tzaddik. Doesn't matter. But let's say that person suffers greatly over years with cancer to the point that they just absolutely wither away. That suffering is the mercy of Hashem, because that does tikkun for that soul through that, and that person does not have to be punished in Gehenna for not completing that soul's tikkun.
So suffering is what you're saying is the ultimate rectification. Yes. The more one suffers, the more one rectifies and completes tikkun.
I must be doing a heck of a job.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of, like we talked about in class the other day, with aborted babies and babies that are stillborn and maybe they die really young. Those are very high souls. All that soul had to do was come into this world for a brief moment to complete its tikkun. Or the Down syndrome and the trisomy 21, those souls are really, really high, elevated souls. And all that soul has to do is be in that kid, because that kid cannot sin. Because it's not capable of sin, because it can't make its own decisions. Every decision has to be made for it. And those children are generally very loving. They're very hesed. And they're very high souls. And of course, the higher soul you have, the more you are mocked. Those people have the highest souls. And they just have to be in this earth. And being in the earth is the tikkun.